What it does is it activates, you can call it God or source or the quantum field if you want, or the subconscious mind. Whatever it is, it taps into way more resources that are beyond your normal small thinking mind, right? When you're feeling it and envisioning yourself in these end states versus just having some goal written on paper that maybe you'll get to in 5 years.
Welcome to the Fairy Cast. We'll bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today's guest is Dan O'Connor, a professional coder, musician, and expert in spiritual studies. Through his work, Dan explores the intersections of creativity, technology, and consciousness, helping people align their mindsets, habits, and motivation with the lives they want to create. As the founder of danosongs.com, he's shared his music with listeners worldwide while guiding others in the art of reality selection and manifestation. So, Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Great. I'm excited to have you here. So, Dan,
Hi.
you have a fascinating triple identity, I would say, professional coder, musician, and spiritual explorer. So, what was the initial thread or curiosity that connected these seemingly different worlds for you?
Um, well, it's funny because I went to music school, you know, studied jazz and business and the music business. And I got into the music business back at the time when the internet was a brand new thing. And one of the first companies I worked for was Kaman, Kaman, who owned Ovation Guitars. And I was working for them, and the whole thing was how to figure out how to do websites back then, you know. So here I am working in the music business, and now suddenly it's like, okay, now we got to figure out web stuff. And when I got into that, then I realized, the same kind of creativity and flow that I feel with writing songs or performing or playing guitar and singing and all that, really was brought out in me in coding as well. And it's just very good, more kind of steady, in demand income that I do like during the day when I'm not doing music that I enjoy.
Great. That's a really interesting story. So, for our
Yep.
audience of engineers and developers who think in system and logic, how would you explain a concept like reality design or manifestation in practical, say, almost algorithmic way?
I like that. That's good. Yeah, actually, it sounds kind of fancy and out there and the word spiritual and all that stuff. But in reality, it really comes down to like deciding exactly what you want in life, which a lot of people just call goals. The difference between goals and visualization and affirmations to so-called select a reality for yourself is that goals are something that like you work towards and maybe you always see in the future, and also that you see that you have to do the things and you have to figure it all out. um, with so-called reality selection or manifestation, which is really just deciding what you want and visualizing it happening in the present tense in your mind. So say, you want 100,000 podcast subscribers, right? So it's like imagining in your mind logging in and, to your platform and seeing your listener count that high in the chart, like a visual representation of that actually occurring in your mind. And you do that like on a daily basis. And you could have several things like that in your mind, like, if you want to maybe do a podcast from all over the world, say, right? Imagining yourself logging in, seeing those high numbers, but you're in Belgium or you're in the States or wherever, looking outside your apartment in a hotel, interviewing somebody famous. And you imagine it in your mind and you feel it and you see it happening. right? And so it's basically goals, but with a vivid visualization in your mind. So I'll give you an algorithm of how you would do it. First is
Okay.
very simple. Yeah, here it goes. So first is a good way of what don't you want right now, right? It might be like, oh, I don't really like where I'm living, or I don't like that I have to go into work every day and commute, or something like that. That helps you decide what you do want, right? So identifying, you might already know what you want, and that's great, and have goals. A lot of people don't. They're just kind of like doing kind of what was handed to them by society. But either way, you have to clearly define what you don't want and what you do want, and you have to write down what you want. So that's step one, right? Step
Okay.
two is coming up with present tense visualization in your mind, or a affirmation. Like it's like I'm seeing 100,000 podcast listens when I log into my account. I'm seeing 100,000 podcast listens when I log into my account. And just saying that every morning and every day and every night before you go to sleep, and whenever you think of it all day, and imagining that, and imagining how exciting that would feel and how natural that would feel,
Mm.
to you in your life. It adds a multiple dimension to your goals, and also what it does is it activates, you can call it God, or source, or the quantum field if you want, or the subconscious mind. Whatever it is, it taps into way more resources that are beyond your normal small thinking mind, right? When you're feeling it and envisioning yourself in these end states versus just having some goal written on paper that maybe you'll get to in 5 years. So now you're viscerally like living this experience every day of being all around the world in your podcast, interviewing famous people, and logging in and seeing these huge numbers. And I'm even seeing it for you right now. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's getting me excited just thinking about it. And it's those feelings that come up that really train your mind to look at the world in a whole new possible way. And bam, now you've selected a new reality, right? And as long as you just persist in that over time, you're going to be light years ahead of where you would be. And you'll find, some people call it power of suggestion or placebo, but I really think it's, once your thoughts that are in your mind are actually connected to reality, like the line between reality and what's out there and what's in here is not as distinct as we think it is. And so but even if you don't believe that, you could still believe that your mind is going to look at the world in a completely different way and see completely different opportunities than if you just say had a goal written down that you thought, oh, in 5 years I'm going to do, and you think, wouldn't that be nice someday?
Mm.
See the difference? So
Yeah.
those are the two steps. Define what you want and imagine a scene in your mind, or say a short affirmation that is basically, and you could do it for every area of your life. You could do it for, if you're a coder, say you want to be, years ago I had the vision that I'd be like a senior developer, uh, and being remote, and, stuff like that, a remote worker. Like that was like a dream in my mind. I saw in a movie like 20 years ago of some guy working out on the ocean on a laptop, and I was like, whatever that is, that's what I want to do. So I always had that vision in my mind, and eventually it just happened. Whereas if I was just complaining about my job and thinking, oh, this is just how life is, or whatever, it wouldn't have happened. You're just going to get stuck in the same rut, you know?
Mm.
So you can apply it to career, to your health, or whatever. I've applied it to just my tech career. Um, and I've applied it to music. Um, and I've seen incredible gains by visualizing end goals versus just being like, I'm just going to play local gigs and just see what comes to me. You know what I mean? And or go out and really hunt and try to find gigs and work really hard. Like I've never
Mm.
done that. I've always just pictured myself, I play, and I go to open jams, and people wind up coming to me and asking me to play. I don't
All
really
right.
work at it. So that's the short algorithm.
Well, really fascinating. I mean, we'll laid out steps from writing it down to constant imaginations and affirmations. I think
Yeah.
those are really great steps to take. So, Dan, let's talk about the creative process. So, how does your approach to solving complex coding problem differ from your process of writing a new song? Is there a common thread in, these different tasks as, relates to creativity?
Yeah, there's definitely a process, you know. The better comparison is like coding a brand new feature, you know, like say a whole new section of a website, right?
Okay.
Something brand new, because that's
Mm,
kind of the most akin to writing a new song, right? So
mm,
again, it comes down to, fortunately in coding, you know, if you're at a good company, they're going to give you good requirements, right? And they're going to give you a good visual of what it's going to look like by the time you're done. So in a job, you're given the visualization, you're given the end goal by the design department, right? With a song, you're the creative force. So you have to say, oh, I want to write something funky that kind of has uh, spiritual Led Zeppelin type lyrics, but it's funky like Red Hot Chili Peppers. You have to have the vision of what that's going to look and sound like. And to me, I know that whenever I write a song, I'm going to stick to the traditional format of verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, which is the typical pop song structure. So I'm going to stick to that. So in both cases, you have an end goal that you want to get to, right? And now, interestingly enough, in both cases, you can use ChatGPT or another AI to actually collaborate to either write code or write lyrics. So now I'm more into like designing prompts to write cool lyrics, you know, which is like, what do I envision for these lyrics? Or writing prompts to write the code for a new feature. So it's very similar. And then, you know, you just kind of take stabs, you know, it's like, okay, let's see what ideas AI has for a verse and a chorus based on my idea of a Led Zeppelin meets Chili Peppers song. And let's see what Google Gemini has for me in terms of code to um, create a new section on the e-commerce portion of a website. And then you look at it and you go, is that good? Do I think that's good? Uh, and a lot of times it's like, no, so I'll revise the prompt, you know? And then eventually I'll keep revising prompts until I get its lyrics that are close enough that I go, okay, now I can work with this and then just tweak, and then I get out my guitar and I can like tweak the lyrics so that it works for me and makes sense to me and goes with the flow of the song. And then a lot of times with code, I'll grab the code, I'll drop it in and I'll run it and I'll say, what does this thing do that like Gemini made based on my prompt? And most times it breaks, you know, it doesn't work right out of the box. But it does something usually. Yeah, and it kind of gets you like, as you revise the prompts, it can get you like 80% there, you know? And then you tweak and you tweak and you tweak until you fine tune it. And then, you know, once you're doing code, then you're going to run the code, you're going to run it on your local machine and you're going to see this do what I want. And then you're going to tweak it. And then you're going to, you know, usually you're doing the CSS to make sure that, it looks like the requirements are. You know, Gemini's not that smart. It can get pretty close. You could upload an image of an end result for visual design for a website, and it can get pretty close with CSS, but it won't be perfect, and the whole thing won't work. You have to retest and retest and retest. Same with a song, and then you actually sing the lyrics over the chords that you've chosen or collaborated with AI on. You can collaborate on chord progressions too. Does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay,
That was
cool.
that was a great response there, Dan. So you talk
Thanks.
about the 10 laws of reality design. So if you had to share just one of these laws with a room full of technical professionals who are feeling stuck or burned out, which one would it be and
Oh,
why?
I do this all the time. It would be law of assumption, right?
Okay.
And I do it all the time with coding. If I'm really frustrated and I can't figure something out and it's the end of the day, I'll just cash in and I'll just think to myself, tomorrow morning when I log in, I'm going to work on that problem and it's just the solution is just going to come to me. It's just going to
Mm,
work. I'm going to know. And I say to myself, it's going to be easier than I even thought it was.
mm,
I do it all the time. It's going to be easier and quicker than I even thought it was. And I visualize that in my mind. And I'm always saying to myself, all my projects take way quicker than anybody expects it to. I'm always saying
wow.
that to myself. And over time, that really happened because now you've got all the AI chats helping you. It's like having two employees, you know? But that's my mantra with work. My other mantra with work is as a coder, if I'm stressed, that's my cue to do less, actually. I back off because it doesn't work for me. You can't, as a coder or someone using your brain, you can't work through stress. If you feel the business pressures building up on you and you're trying to make a deadline, once you start to feel that, you got to stop. So that's another one of my sayings as I stress and I do less and my work is always completed easier than I thought it would, you know? And over time it actually happens because you kind of get better and better and better at rethinking problems, especially with debugging really hard code, like a problem that exists on production, but nobody can reproduce. You've really got to step back and you've really got to use your brain and you've really got to visualize like, I can't reproduce this, but how are we going to have that end result of this working? How are we going to figure this out? And then a lot of times it might be like, okay, we need logging. So we're going to just unfortunately release a ticket that just has a log so that we can see what's happening on production. Or we're going to take a best guess, you know, or we're going to eliminate the worst part of the problem. Like say you're getting duplicate payments or something, right?
Mm,
And nobody knows why. And the user is somehow getting double charged, but you can't really figure it out and nobody can reproduce it. And nobody knows exactly what that user is doing, you know? Basically you go, okay, how can I just stop that? And in a very recent thing that actually just happened, I wound up just putting a check. It seemed obvious, but once we did it, to put a pre-check in for that order number and that amount, to make sure it hadn't already gone through. We didn't want to do that at first because it adds an API call into the whole, it adds time and another transaction before even doing the transaction. But it turned out it was just necessary. But you see what I'm saying?
mm,
Like law of assumption. Assume things will work out. Assume the project will get done. Assume it's just code and you're smart enough to
wow.
figure it out on time. Just assume it. I'm going to get this done. There's no doubt about it. It's just code. Somebody wrote it. I can figure it out, you know?
Mm, mm. Okay. So, Dan, I'm curious about the intersection of AI and creativity. So, as both a
Uh-huh.
coder and a musician, how do you see AI tools expanding human creative potential, rather than just replacing it?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is everybody thought like, oh, AI is going to take over developer jobs and all that stuff. And you could say that about filmmaking and songs and all that. But the truth is that, it might replace some very entry level coding jobs, you know? But at the end of the day, if you're an experienced professional, nobody can write the prompts. Like, you know, people in my business that I work with as a developer, they're doing business. They're not writing prompts that are like, you know, engineered to create applications. It's just not what they're doing. They're worried about business. They're meeting with the higher up executives. They're trying to map out projects. They're trying to plan requirements, all that stuff. So AI is really, it's a collaborative tool, and it's so advanced that it's scary to people, but it's really no different than like having a calculator. Or back in the day, I always used a rhyming dictionary for writing songs, you know, or I always used what was called a cut up engine. A cut up engine, I would take a bunch of lyrics from other songs, drop it in a cut up engine, and it would splice all the words up into just completely random words. And I would work with those words from popular songs. So I had a starting vocabulary, so there's always been tools, you know, and all AI really does is it's just another tool for collaboration. And there's a lot of shame against using AI for like album covers and even to make music or write code or whatever. And I just think that's completely unnecessary. Now the legalities of using training data, I don't know. To me, I'm a little bit on the fence of that. Like the fact that these companies go out and just train themselves on everything on the internet, and should those sources be compensated? I'm not really sure, because in reality, the human mind is not producing anything that it wasn't trained on before in life, right? So if I write a song or if I write fresh code, my brain picked that up from sources that were copywritten at some point. You know? So how is training data any different? That's my view. And I know that the big tech companies, they see it that way too. And I tend to see it that way. It's so hyper efficient that it's scary though. And I understand that. But as someone who actually uses it, it's pretty stupid, actually. Um, yeah, you actually, especially with code, especially, sorry, Google, but like Gemini's kind of the worst. It's kind of the stupidest because it's the most um least finessed, but it it has certain qualities because it's Google that it's so tapped into the Google ecosystem that it gets real-time data better. Um, but you have to really tell these things what to do. They're not taking over the world on their own, at least not now. Nothing like that.
Okay, great opinion there. So, for the builders and creators listening, what is one simple daily habit from your own life uh that has had the most disproportionate positive impact on your creativity and focus?
Definitely, there was a book called Getting Things Done
Hmm.
that anybody could read. And it's a fabulous book that revolutionized like the entire way I approach everything that I do, which is keeping lists. But it's not just to-do lists. It's like it's basically like realizing that like for real, for real, for real, you can only do one thing at a time. Only one thing at a time. And especially in huge coding projects, you know, my first step with everything and my first daily habit is, I'll apply it to work first, is take that huge project and you got to look at one micro step at a time. Micro step. The step might even be, you know, find the code where this bug is happening. It's not solve the problem. It's not even test it. It's not even reproduce it. It's like literally where, or it might even be actually talk to the QA person and show me the problem. Now, just with that one little task, you've got a bunch of tasks. You gotta schedule time with the QA person. You gotta make sure your schedule fits with their schedule. You gotta meet with them. You gotta get on. They gotta show you. Reality moves in tiny, tiny steps. So there's so many micro steps, and it's really important to look at every single thing in your life in terms of micro steps, right? Throughout your day, from the time you wake up from the time you go to bed.
Hmm.
Um, and bringing those all down, and for me, I have them in an app. I like Google Keep. I also use an app called Discipline,
Oh
which you
wow.
can keep your daily habits and track off your daily habits. Like my first daily habit is like sleep. Bam. I click slept. And actually that's not taken for granted because getting a good night's sleep on time, the way you should, it's a reminder every day for me of like, get good sleep. My next step when I wake up for the day is, of course, one of my steps is just gym. I try to go every single day. But getting back to work, I like to create micro steps for my projects and what I'm coding that are so small that I can do them. It might literally take 15, 20 minutes, and then I take a break. I stop. I go get a drink of water. I get up. I move around. I go on my phone for a few minutes. I I check out. I'm like, because guess what? Right then, I got something done,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I could die now. Who knows what the hell life is going to throw at us. So for me, I have a constant feeling of accomplishment all day long because I'm just breaking everything down, you know? In my discipline app, I keep my personal things that I like to do every day. I don't always do them every day, but I like to check them off and you get little points. And there's another great app called Habitify or Habitica that it's more like a real game. Actually, you add all your daily habits in there and it actually has like little characters and you can make yourself little prizes and keep track of what you're doing all day. So it's the habit of habits, believe it or not. Computer science people might like that. It's meta. It's a meta cognition. It's like having a habit of having habits.
Oh wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
That was really, really insightful, Dan. I just took notes of over three, apps here that I can also go check out to see how I can build better habits with them. Google Keep, Discipline, and Habitica. Okay, so moving on, Dan, in your experience, what is the most common limiting belief that holds technically brilliant people back from achieving their personal and professional goals?
Hmm. Limiting a limiting belief. Yeah. I think that you know, for me, it's kind of like as a developer, I've reached this point in my life now where I've been a senior developer for like 10 years. Um, Obviously, it's going to be if you put limiting beliefs on your own talent, limiting beliefs on your own salary cap, limiting beliefs on what's possible, what's not possible, in career and in life, you know. Um, and or like I know a lot of people who just think they could never learn to code, like it's just too hard. Like coding is abstract and it's very different. So it's any kind of belief where you just don't think you could do something that you really, really, really want, you know? Like it, that's the key. If you don't really want to do it, a limiting belief doesn't even matter, right? But if you really want to be a senior coder or say you want to start your own company, even, you know, one limiting belief I know I had from the time I was young is like, starting a company. It was hard. You had to really have money. This was until, my first 10, 20 years of working. You had to have connections. It was too late for me to do that or whatever, you know and I didn't even realize I had those limiting beliefs, you know, that's a lot different today because everybody's kind of entrepreneurial. But back when the internet started, it was kind of like, oh, there's all these .com people, I missed it, or whatever. I was too busy trying to be a coder, but in reality, no. So now there is no time that is the wrong time. timing and external circumstances just do not matter. What matters is clearly defining your vision in your mind of what you want, you know? And for me, that's now more like, AI, being involved in AI. I don't even have a clear picture. It's not exactly what I'm doing now, though. I know that. Like, I know the days of like just me coding, like at some point I need to kind of expand from that into either leadership or speaking or, something bigger. And also, you don't even have to start a company. Now I'm getting offers in for actual equity companies are offering now. So I'm like, oh, see, I had this big vision of like, I'd love to be in a company that has an IPO. And now it's like, oh, all of a sudden, companies are offering equity. They never did that. It used to just be stock options back in the day. So just not limiting yourself to what you see right in front of you right now, or the roles in your company, or the roles that are on Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever. Really think about what you want, not what's right in front of you. Because I know one thing is just going and going on LinkedIn and applying to 100 developer jobs. All you're going to do is be competing with 3, 4,000 other people, you know, uh, for the same jobs, you know. Um, it's not the most productive way to just limit your thinking to like what's in front of you. I think it's important to think what really excites me, what's huge, but also could be applicable applicable to a bigger market. Um, and maybe that means new roles are created. For me, it's this whole AI thing, so interesting and freeing. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So, Dan, in your journey bridging the precise world of code with the fluid world of music and consciousness, I'd like to ask,
hmm
what does the word innovation truly mean to you?
Innovation. Yeah, I mean, innovation really is allowing it. That's a big term in manifestation where it comes from beyond you. Um, and it's a synthesis of ideas. So right now I've got this whole synthesis of the AI chats. I've got music. I've got coding. I've got these ideas of visualization and affirmation. And I think what's being innovative is like looking at everything that you're truly interested in. There's this guy, Dan Coe, Dankoe. He's one of my favorite new guys. He's a big YouTuber. And I learned a lot from him, which is the new economy, that is created by what he calls like the renaissance of AI and the renaissance of YouTube, is that we have the power to actually completely explore what truly makes us passionate and interested in life, um, and share it with the world and teach that and teach people along the way. And actually, Dan Coe is one of the reasons I'm sitting here with you right now, because I was like, I don't have to come on podcast uh, interviews just being like, oh, I'm a PHP JavaScript developer. I don't have to do that. I don't have to fit into what the world's telling me. I can be like, no, I'm a musician and I'm a coder. I can tell my music people, hey, I'm a coder. I can tell my job, hey, I'm a musician, and like I have a lot more to offer than just that. And I think that's innovation. But when it applies, and then you can take that and apply that to specific products too, right? That's not the phase I'm in right now. I'm more like I am the brand, I am the product. But other people are more into like creating apps and creating sites. Well, it would be the same idea, taking what you've learned. Um, and actually, I do have an idea for a stock app because I do pick stocks and invest, and I tend to stick to the big tech stocks that are doing quantum computing, AI, and semiconductors. And I had an idea to make an app just for that because that's my interest. Just on the what they call the Magnificent Seven and all the major companies that are behind all the huge innovations right now. So that's an idea. Take what you're interested in. That maybe someone else is doing it, maybe not. But do it for yourself, can create innovation, I think.
Okay, that was an interesting one. So, Dan, for our audience and listeners who are pretty, interested or, have been motivated by your talk about mind consciousness and a blend of tech and creativity. So, where is the best place for them to go learn more about you and your work in this field, or perhaps even contact
If
you?
you're more Sure, if you're more on the professional side, you can go to my danosongs.com, danosong.com, and you can see my LinkedIn under follow me. You can go to my LinkedIn and then just connect with me on LinkedIn if you're more interested in seeing like my strictly technical background uh, as a coder. But also from there, you can go to my Instagram and my YouTube where I do a lot of like music tutorials and a lot of like branded content and like just frankly like just a ton of really fun stuff. My traveling, I'm into photography and video and content creation and all that stuff. Or like I said, go to my LinkedIn. But main thing is danosongs.com is my main site.
All right, Dan, I'll be sure to add these links to the show notes. So that it's been a
Okay,
really insightful and interesting conversation with you, and I'm excited
great,
to have
thanks.
you on the show today.
It's my pleasure. It's been great talking with you.